Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about the Pokemon card market because it seems like the bubble might finally be starting to pop. And it also seems like a lot of people are sharing this sentiment right about now. And the reason I say this now is not because of whatever price corrections that have been happening in the last 2 months, because we've seen a lot of sets correcting, like Ascended Heroes has been falling down a little bit, especially with the singles, the sealed as well. And the last three main series sets, Pitch Black, Perfect Order, and Chaos Rising, they're all pretty much at MSRP right now because no one wants them. And and that's one of the leading reasons why a lot of people think the market is done and it's about to be over. But there's a lot of other reasons why I think that the bubble is about to burst. And in the next video, I'm going to talk about what I'm planning to do in light of this thought and this belief. But for now, I want to talk about first, several months ago in January, early this year, January, February, March, I was making videos saying that, the market is going to crash soon, it's going to correct soon, and it's finally time to sell my Pokemon investments. And when I started selling it, a lot of the investments that I sold went up in value after I sold them. Like 151, I sold a case of 151 UPCs for like $2,000, and they climbed to like $4,000 a couple months later. And then a lot of other things. I sold individual UPCs for $1,300 each, and I made some pretty good money on pretty much all the investments, even though some of them continue to climb afterwards. I sold a lot of things like Destiny Rivals booster boxes, uh, Chilling Reign booster boxes, pretty much everything that I had. I just listed at market price, and within the last couple months, maybe sold $40,000 or $50,000 worth of it at full market price. Now I still have a lot of stuff, clearly. Some of it is inventory that I just move through on the daily. Some of it is still longer holds that I will get to soon. But I think now, between now and the end of the year, is really where the last chance is to exit at the peak of the market. And when I say this, I don't mean that it's 100% guaranteed that the market is going to crash. Like, it could just be a little bit of correction for everything. Everything goes down 10-20%. But regardless, I wouldn't want to be holding the bag when everything is so not liquid in a couple months. And now here is where we get to the actual reasoning. There's many reasons that I want to address, and hopefully I don't miss any of them. But the first thing is, we're starting to see really a similar trend to what happened with the 25th anniversary around that time 5 years ago, because they're basically printing to demand now. And because they're opening up new factories, and their printing capacity is getting larger, they're finally able to start being able to meet demand. And whether or not they're intentionally not meeting demand is a different debate, but now they're definitely starting to be able to do it. And they're going to start cashing out on it very soon, and likely with the 30th anniversary, because they did such things with the 25th anniversary. And 5 years ago, they released a statement saying, we will be printing all products to demand. So basically, it's not a reprint, it's just that everything will be printed to demand. As long as there's an order, they will print it. And we saw a release with the Pokemon Center ETBs for 30th anniversary, the 30th anniversary collection, which was like 4 million units of ETBs, I'm pretty sure. And that is far more Pokemon Center ETBs that they've ever released. So just consider how much more of everything else they're probably printing. And that drop lasted like 6 hours, even with all the botting. People have bought like 500 orders of these ETBs, and it still lasts like 6 hours for the drop. So that just puts into perspective what's to come. For the coming set, I'm pretty sure very soon they're going to release a statement saying they're going to print to demand, because that's when they cash out, because they're like thinking, oh, the market's at a peak. So that's when we cash out, we print to demand, and we make as much as we can before everything comes collapsing down. That's one of the biggest reasons, because 30th anniversary is rolling around, and we're seeing how much more printing has really been ramped up. The second reason really ties into the first reason. We're actually seeing reprints now. Destiny Rivals has a confirmed reprint for ETBs and booster boxes, which is, first of all, kind of pretty much unheard of in the last year or two, where we're seeing booster box reprints, and it's for a good set like Destined Rivals. So it really seems that they're trying to cash out now they have the printing capacity on the demand, especially when they know what's gonna sell. You know, they're obviously not going to go and be like, we're going to go print pitch black to demand right now. It's basically already at demand. Yes, you can barely find it on the shelf, but still, resale, whatever scalpers, they can't make much money from buying from Walmart and flipping it. They probably will lose money. And so that's why Perfect Order, Chaos Wrestling, it's all sitting on the shelf right now. But they're going back and printing those older sets like, Destined Rivals that are still in the reprint window but haven't got their proper reprint yet and have crazy high demand. So, as someone who has, 100 packs of Destined Rivals that I bought at, you know, that what $10 a pack, that's kind of concerning because who knows how it's gonna react. But granted, 100 packs not a lot, but I'm just saying like because I have these packs, it is a little bit worrisome that they're finally doing these reprints for the modern sets that are deserved. But that's still not indicative of a crash because reprints are necessary, and they usually only result in small corrections because the demand is still extremely high, and usually the market can absorb all the new reprinted product as long as even if it takes a month or two, as long as it's not being printed to demand. Usually the market does recover, especially with such a strong market right now. But there's more considerations that go into why I think we're really finally reaching the peak of the market. The third thing is the increasing rise of the online pack ripping gambling apps. And this has never been a problem before because AI hasn't been so as robust, technology has been as robust, and in the last 5 years a lot has changed with technology. So in the last sell off that we had with Pokemon a couple of years ago, there was not these factors, but I still think this is a leading indicator of the peak of the market because so many third parties are trying to cash in on Pokemon cards, and it's no longer before what we would see is pretty much every single store that you could think of trying to cash in on Pokemon cards. Your grocery stores, your convenience stores, your vape stores, any kind of store try to sell Pokemon cards, to cash in on the hype. But now we're seeing people leverage technology to cash in on this hype, but they're basically cutting out the middlemen because they're not going and they don't have to purchase Pokemon cards at retail price. They just set the price of their mystery packs, their gambling packs online, and then they run their online casino. And it's basically the same. Honestly, I see basically the parallels with like the peak of NFTs and crypto because that's pretty much the same thing. It just results in a hyper focus on online gambling, and then everyone loses the plot and everything goes to nothing. But I think this is especially problematic for Pokemon because at its core, the only people that survive this are the collectors that don't care about the value and the businesses that sell to collectors because they buy at wholesale and they sell it at MSRP. Everyone else who's buying at high prices and then reselling it for a higher price might get caught holding the bag and is probably going to be victim to the greater fool theory at some point if the market does crash. And so when these online casinos are being introduced with online pack ripping, it's no longer about collecting at all. It's just about the money. And so that's how you really can see that, we're reaching territories that are definitely like a bubble and definitely concerning and problematic because at us like even if you have a if I would be way less worried, buying a box of pitch black right now at market price than these online pack casinos because at probably I can still get somewhat somewhere a little below MSRP for the box if I wanted to fire sell it even in a year if demand severely tapers off because they're still kids and even some young adults that are genuine collectors of the cards. So they appreciate the artwork, they appreciate master setting, and so there is still a customer there. But for the online casinos, it's just once people are done with the money, all the people in it for the money are gone. Who's really gambling on these apps anymore? Because it's not the kids. But that is one of the biggest issues I see right now, and with so many people, because there's the first guy that does it is the innovator. They're gonna make it big. They're gonna cash out huge on the market and the profits of all these people flocking to online pack gambling. But then you see so many startups, so many random people with vibe coded apps that want to cash in on the same business model, same business idea. That's when, and we're already straying from the plot because it's no longer about physical card collecting, it's about gambling. And then some people are hopping on the bandwagon. It's just a recipe for disaster. And then there leaves the fourth and final pillar that I see as extremely problematic, and that is that Logan Paul is back at it. And honestly, if you just look at his career trajectory, a lot of it involves, jumping from alleged scam to alleged scam. And usually, whatever project he hops on does not end well. And the even funnier thing is that it has happened before with Pokemon, because he's pumped, vintage Pokemon back, 5 years ago, 3, 4, 5 years ago, when the last boom was. And he makes his money, he gets out at the peak, and then the market crashes, and he's unscathed, and he's back pumping more Pokemon cards just out of the blue. And isn't it odd that this genuine collector from childhood only seems to appear to cash in on the money when the market is at the absolute peak? It's a little odd, but it is what it is. And but I think that, at least if you look on, just take a little lesson from the past, it cannot be a good sign. And I do think that things will be a lot different this time, when the market does correct, if it does crash. And I personally have no clue whether it's going to be different in a good way or a bad way, because I could see the market either not crashing very hard, because they say like higher highs and higher lows. So, if it does crash, in a year, the I the idea of a healthy, market, or the idea that your collectibles are in a healthy place, is that the price of them are still higher than the highs. The low that it hits is still higher than the price was before the market exploded, right? That's how the hobby's not absolutely cooked, because you're still made gains even though you're at the market's at an all-time low after the crash. That is one thing that is possible, because even when the market crashes, there's still so many more people who are now invested in Pokemon, who are collecting Pokemon, and are in the space, especially with investors, pack rippers, and so many rip and shippers, all these different new people that have emerged in the market in the last couple of years. Now there also is the possibility that it is different, far different from the past in the bad way, because it could be that this is the biggest, most detrimental dump in history, and that the franchise does not survive, and basically everything just goes to nothing. But I feel like that is probably the pretty unlikely. I think that's because, of course, it's because Pokemon is the largest grossing franchise for collectibles toys to date. And and the animes, is done phenomenal. The games have done phenomenal. So it doesn't really make sense for the hobby to crash just from all the scalpers and the investors exiting the market, because it still should hold strong as a brand to the collectors, to the players of the game. Now, that's why I think that's the least likely. However, it's always a possibility, because we're in uncharted territories with the current market, and so you can't expect a carbon copy of what happened in the past. Though we can look upon the past and recognize, oh, Logan Paul's back into it, it's probably a bad sign. And you can look at back and say, oh, everyone wants a slice of the pie now, everyone. That's probably a bad sign. oh, they're printing insane amounts for these new hype sets. It's probably a bad sign. But we still can't 100% predict the future. So it's possible that, in 6 months' time, in a year time, the market is still completely strong. We move past this correction and it's stronger than ever. But there's also a very high chance it's not. And I think the most likely outcomes are that either one, we fall back down to higher lows, and the market corrects severely. A lot of things drop, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50%, but they're still higher than they were before the boom. Or second, we just follow a similar trajectory as before, and the market has its crash. It's very cyclical. It happens like every couple years. Has this normal crash, exactly the same as the past. Has this normal crash, and then in 3, 4, 5 years again, the hype is back and people are back in it. But for now, no one really knows. Even the people who've been in the game the longest, like Rudy, like all the OGs, they also don't know, because again, we're in uncharted territories. But I think those are the leading indicators that show that the market's pretty cooked. It's probably going to be crashing, or the bubble's going to be bursting soon. And I actually do have a plan for what I'm going to personally do, because as someone who has been running this as a business, there's a lot of different considerations than what I would be only considering if I was only investing. And I'm going to go over that in the next video, because it's just way too much to go over. But there's a lot of considerations for me, both as an investor, as a business owner, and also even as a collector. And so I'm going to go through those three perspectives and what my plan is in the next coming 6 months before my anticipated moment of the crash. But that's going to be it for this video. Let me know what you guys think about the current market conditions, if you also think the bubble's about to burst, and what you're about to do about it. So that's it for this video, and let me know in the comments what you guys think. Subscribe to join the journey.